morning. So I'm a developer. I've been a hobbyist developer for a long time. Some 6 years ago, we founded this really small group of hackers, developers that started building software for the stock markets. It is still a really small team, and we were sitting inside a stock brokerage. So in the last 6 years, the stock brokerage, a very critical financial business, it's ballooned, it's become a massive enterprise, but we are still a bunch of hackers sitting inside it. So this is something I think about every day, and we are FOSS heavy, we are 100% FOSS stack. So it makes me think and ponder every day what it means to be a group of FOSS hackers inside an enterprise. I don't really have answers there, but these are some of the thoughts that I have regularly, and I thought I'd share here. So Zerodha started out as a discount brokerage in 2010, a stockbroker that offered trading and investments to the masses at really discounted rates, very specifically 20 rupees flat, as opposed to the large bankers and brokers at the time who charge a significant percentage of investment and trade volumes. And the difference was humongous, astronomical difference in cost. So Zerodha gained traction, it was still a tiny broker. In 2013, Zerodha Tech, the team, was founded. And we got together, there was no set agenda. We looked around us, all the FOSS projects that we were familiar with, we started picking and choosing and assembling those, and we started building a trading platform. In 2015, we released Kite, our flagship trading platform. And that was a big success. And ever since, we've just been building, deleting, refactoring, rebuilding more and more products and services for the Indian financial and capital markets. And cut to 2019, January earlier this year, we became India's largest stockbroker. And we did that by trumping the 3 biggest banks in India and I think 3,000 registered brokers. And we did all of that with 0 proprietary enterprise software. We built everything. Thanks. We just used the tools and software and projects that were always available to us as a group of developers. We stitched them together, lots of tools, including ERPNext and Frappe, and we made whatever we have today. So I really like this image. That is how, the top left view, that is how trading platforms used to look. No matter where you went, which broker you went to, which bank you went to, you got a platform that looked exactly the same, and it looked like that. But, okay, it's not very clear here, it's a little blurred, but this is how our platforms look today. They look human, they're built for human beings. So we discovered ERPNext in 2016 by complete happenstance. Vinay, who's sitting there, he, I think, stumbled upon it during one of his Google escapades. Then we immediately fell in love, just by the way it looked. It was, again, built for human beings. An enterprise piece of software that looked and felt great in itself was mind-blowing. So we tried it out, tested it out. We ran some pilots, and we decided to switch to it. And at the time, it was a big call because we didn't really know the ERPNext team personally, like we know now. And being a critical financial business that deals with extremely sensitive financial transactions, switching to an open source system out there without any enterprise guarantees and all of that was quite a big risk, was quite a big call. But after a period of testing, we made the switch anyway. And by the period of testing, I mean around probably 5 days. So when you look at a good piece of software, you can immediately feel it. You know that it's going to be good. So that's what happened to us. So granted, we use more Frappe than ERPNext. We use Frappe extensively. And I think Rushabh had some reservations about that. I don't know what he still thinks, but I think Frappe and by extension ERPNext has an infectious architecture. When we get a complex business or regulatory problem, and in our industry there are regulatory problems every day. Rules change practically every week. You have to redo and remodel your business literally week after week. We've started thinking, breaking down problems in terms of doc types and workflows and user access permissions, the maker checker semantics, all of these things that are a part of this beautiful system. And I think that shows how much we've adopted these set of technologies. And I think this is a personal pet peeve of mine. I think what most proprietary enterprise systems miss out on, especially B2B ones, is that at the end of the day, these apps and platforms are built for human beings to use. If it's a company, employs across different departments. So if you look at classic proprietary software, they don't look good, they don't feel good. The UI and UX, it has no coherence. Your HR module looks like A, your finance module looks like B, and there's this huge cognitive burden that every employee has to take over to understand and navigate these systems. The money and time spent by enterprises on training their employees and the loss of productivity and time. It's very difficult to quantify, but it's there. And I think at Zerodha, today we have 1,200 employees, and everybody does everything on Frappe or ERPNext. And sorry. Everything from managing their swipe-ins to the filing taxes to doing accounting, looking at ledgers, all sorts of things. So, and we don't really spend time training our employees to get used to these systems because there's this universal UI and language, and it's extremely valuable. Yeah, this is as I said in the beginning, I don't really know what an enterprise is, which is why throughout the presentation I've put enterprise in quotes. We've gone from a really tiny team to a slightly larger tiny team, while the enterprise around us, encompassing us, has grown leaps and bounds. So we are enterprise. In the eyes of the industry, we are a massive enterprise, the largest broker in India. But our team of developers, we don't feel like an enterprise. So what is this enterprise anyway? At the end of the day, in a large organization, it's always the set of developers who have to deal, set up, configure, install enterprise systems for others to use. And again, as I said, ERPNext looks nothing like typical enterprise software. I've used the word hot garbage here, which is very harsh and brutal, but that's something that I'm very passionate about. I feel strongly against poorly designed software. When a large company picks up a problem, be it in ERP or anything, and they just go building and developing, tons and tons of features and whatnot, multiple scopes without the end user in mind. For an ERP system, an employee, a human employee. Yeah, so ERPNext absolutely has helped Zerodha in its journey to becoming the largest stockbroker in India. And I don't mean in the sidelines, I mean in the center stage. We probably would not have become the largest broker in India if it wasn't for Frappe and ERPNext. I have no cons in admitting that's what it is. And I consider Zerodha, the stockbroker with this tech team embedded inside it, a great case study for FOSS enterprises. Don't really have to look elsewhere. We've done this in an extremely critical, heavily regulated, high-risk industry. And we've done it by using 100% FOSS tool. So it's definitely possible. And it's a case study that can be, it's a case study that can probably be, definitely be replicated to other industries and other scopes. So the FOSS landscape, this is just a, just generic general thoughts. I think personally I've seen, and this is purely anecdotal, I've seen the FOSS landscape change massively in the last 10 years, like absolutely massively. From what used to be tiny little popular FOSS projects to massive FOSS projects sponsored and funded by mega corporations, massive multi-billion-dollar acquisitions, practically indefinite amounts of money coming into the FOSS ecosystem. And the other very interesting debate that is also playing a very important role in the shaping of FOSS and its future is the trend of cloud companies adopting FOSS and wrapping them into SaaS services and selling them out. And that has again given rise to the very interesting and fierce debates about licensing. And MongoDB and Redis are two very recent examples. There's this whole new commons clause, Apache with commons clause, disclose source trend, where you can see the source code, but it's not FOSS. I mean, to me, that doesn't really feel like a healthy trend, but it's just a symptom of the evolution that's happening right now. And the beauty about FOSS is that it's completely extensible. So inferior systems like this, inferior ideas like this will probably just get washed out, or they'll carve their own niche and grow alongside, which is fair. That said, despite the really large amount of corporate funding that's coming into the ecosystem, most FOSS projects out there, even the biggest of the biggest, most popular libraries, frameworks, they're all funded by people, hackers and developers with passion, with their personal time. And most of the FOSS work that happens out there is just unpaid. I know it personally because I spend a lot of my personal time working on FOSS projects. And the funding aspects are also seeing a lot of evolution. Patreon is a system that's gaining a lot of ground. There are certain projects that have achieved sustainable levels of funding purely through Patreon as a platform. There's a Code Fund, which is all about ethical open source ads in an attempt that attempts to fund developers. There was a very interesting and deeply philosophical debate that happened a couple of weeks ago. There was this project that came out, funding.js, by FOSS, who's a popular Node.js developer. So he built this library that started showing text ads on terminals as people installed Node packages. And that was immediately met with massive backlash. There were huge, fierce debates. Tons of open source communities participated. And you had to pull the project back. The sponsors backed out. That's neither good or bad, but it's just yet another symptom of an ecosystem that is trying to evolve sustainability. And about corporate funding, it's also something that sees a lot of debate. I think corporations, all these massive megacorps who've been historically against FOSS, who try to malign FOSS, sorry, not FOSS, which is also a good slip of tongue. They've completely changed their attitudes. The tables have turned. Their funding, and I think it's actually great. I mean, the funding is helping the ecosystem grow, and it could be one of the many different ways in which the FOSS landscape probably will attain decent sustainability. Yeah, and this is another debate that often comes up. These megacorps, these same megacorps that are helping FOSS, they have a certain flavor of FOSS that they like. The age-old permissive versus copyleft licenses. Now that could mean that the funding that's coming into permissive licenses could skew the FOSS world, but as long as copyleft licenses and projects and permissive licenses and projects, they both thrive, it's still okay. It's a pragmatic way of looking at it. Coming to India, I've not been able to understand the Indian context on FOSS really. So every year Stack Overflow publishes this very interesting blog post that aggregates statistics on developer behavior, searches, contributions, etc. I think over the last 3-4 years, India has been topping the charts, the most number of questions asked, the most number of searches, views, etc. But if you get on GitHub, you don't really see too many or any Indian open source projects. I can't apart from Frappe, ERPNext, and maybe a couple other smaller projects, I can't really name any open source projects or packages or platforms that have come out of India. And we at work use hundreds and hundreds of these little components, and none of them are from India. And that's very symptomatic. And the other interesting thing is, India it's an extremely cost-conscious country. People are cost-conscious, companies are cost-conscious, and FOSS there is an amazing solution. It's a win-win. But you actually see resistance in a lot of Indian enterprises to FOSS. I don't know if it's ignorance or I don't know. I mean, just the lack of understanding. And that's quite paradoxical. And personally, as a developer, I may be biased, but I think it could be because of non-technical decision makers in positions of technical decision making. And I've seen that happen in this industry, in our industry over and over. Yeah, so these are again, personal anecdotes, opinions. I think there's a distinction between IT culture and developer hacker culture. Now, I may not be able to describe it very eloquently. I may not be able to quantify it, but I think what I mean is quite obvious here. So there's a difference between IT and a hacker, and I think Indian developers, they have to move away from being IT guys to they have to developers, to being hackers. And it's happening very slowly. I'm from Bangalore, we are from Bangalore. So at least in Bangalore, there's this huge concentration of disruptive startups building new age solutions to old problems. I think it's a meme, modern solutions, modern problems. So these companies are companies like us. I mean, Zerodha is a classic. Zerodha is a great example for this. Companies like us are using FOSS tools, building great-looking solutions that is literally forcing the giants, the incumbent giants, to adopt similar ways. Lots of big banks have started incubation centers and innovation centers, and they're all attempting. I mean, the approach is slightly wrong, but large corporations are left with no choice but to adopt superior FOSS technology or be left out. I don't really have any solutions, but here again, it's just an observation. I think there needs to be better organization. I think Rushabh here has been pondering an open source collective. I don't really know how far that's gotten, but there has to be something like that. There's a great problem with discoverability and visibility here. We happened upon ERPNext by complete coincidence. There was no platform to discover. I mean, of course, GitHub is a platform, but there was no discoverability. We didn't even immediately realize that ERPNext was an Indian project. Not that Indian FOSS projects are better than other FOSS projects, but I'm just talking about the need for India also to produce more quality projects. And there's this one interesting trend observed. There are these open source FOSS PR and commit drives that happen in Indian engineering colleges. Students get together, they find a big open source project, they send lots of tiny little patches and fixes, and these things get added to resumes, but it stops there. I mean, it's a great start, it's a great way of getting to know open source projects, getting to know how contributions and PRs work, but it shouldn't stop there. And it's stopping there it's a symptom of the whole IT versus dev culture that I was talking about. And the other one is more fundamental and probably extremely difficult, and I don't think it's an Indian problem. Tech companies, and I don't really buy the whole tech-enabled argument anymore. Times have changed. If there is tech, it's probably very fundamental to a company. It's not just sitting in the sidelines. Companies that have technical solutions need to have a technical way of approaching business problems rather than the other way around. And at work, that is something we heavily focus on. we try to break business problems down into architectural software and architectural problems, and that helps us solve business problems faster and actually make better apps and solutions. And in the end, I think the world would be a very dark and depressing place without FOSS. I released my first FOSS project in 2002, and I remember it was a blogging platform. I remember I picked GPL for it, GNU GPL, and I was quite naive and dumb back then, so I didn't realize I did not really understand the undercurrent, the philosophy, or the motivations behind copyleft licenses or open source. To me, whatever I learned at that point, I learned by looking at projects that I found on the internet, and all had open source code. I looked at that, I edited, changed, mixed, matched, and to me, it just appeared to be common sense. I learned by looking at open source stuff, so whatever I build should also be out there in the open. And that's how I got started, without really understanding, understanding what it all meant. But today, we still continue that in our team. Us, the bunch of hackers, everything we do is FOSS. All the software we consume is FOSS. We regularly release FOSS back, and it's been a great journey, and I think we are just getting started. Zerodha is just getting started, and ERPNext is also just getting started. And I think that's it. So I think someone said that my presentation, and I had to add some colors. So I decided to pick the logos of some really popular and prominent FOSS projects that we use heavily. Got frameworks, web servers, proxies, programming languages, platforms. So this is what makes us. Thank you.